In the last segment, we designed detailed interactions for input and selection. Now, let's talk about how we keep track of that and communicate it to the rest of the team. Several times a week, someone I know or follow discusses the value of designing in the browser. That is, opening a text editor and creating HTML is the first step of detailed design. Lean and other speedy processes are the current thing, and if anything, each month gives us another way to shortcut our work and go faster still. We're supposed to sit together and talk about the design and issues we have. Okay, we do that already. We're supposed to talk through ideas, using quick methods like whiteboards and paper to get the point across. Yep, we do that also. I don't brag about my credentials much, I really don't, but this is one. I've worked in about a dozen different named processes. I've been trained in Agile half a dozen times, and I've completed over 150 successful launched Agile projects alone. I stopped counting several years ago. I've worked for a lot of different organizations, from strategy to interface design, and I've seen it all. And in my experience, and talking to a lot of others, these processes just don't work that well. Especially if you follow a user-centric ethos and you spend time seeking the right solution and end up being multi-platform, you have to design things, make decisions, and find ways to stick to them if you actually want to get anywhere. We forget. People are terrible at remembering project details, interactions, and decisions. We have to document somewhere permanent so we know why we did what we did. Projects that go too fast aren't designed. Not just interface design, but software and architecture design. Decisions are made due to comfortable and available technology. Overly speedy projects get bogged down in technical debt very, very fast. And documentation isn't that slow. I've worked on lean projects where I'd whiteboard out the design solution for the emergent issue while people stood around, then get on the computer to draw it before I forgot. I'd be able to finish in time to print it out and stick it on the wall before developers came back with their detailed questions. Hell, I've done that at hackathons, and if you don't think that's a high-speed environment, I encourage you to go to one sometime. I still write UI specifications. Nope, I don't call them wireframes, but specifications. Half the page is occupied with details on how the interface works, how it should be built, and what the user can do to it. It is a specification we can hold the developers to and test against. This isn't a burden, but often means much less work for developers, as I give them the sizes, colors, methods of movement, timings, opacity, and everything I really can. Usually already translated to the platform, so Android gets SPs and DPs, not pixels or inches. You can prototype all you want still, but once you've figured out how it works, even down to timing and animations, write down the results so the developers can implement it right instead of guessing. There's not a bit of ambiguity, which easily emerges from even turning a prototype into real production code. I very rarely do comps, never designing comps, and never do them endlessly, building every screen, every view, and every platform. Because what's every mean anyway? In print and package design, errors in printing, the slight changes in box sizes they run, etc., are considered tolerances or normal variations, not errors. Accounting for overlaps and inaccuracies in ink placement is a whole very specialized practice called trapping. I have books on my shelf dedicated just to trapping. It's baked into the process of print, from design through QA. These little colored boxes are registration marks, allowing the printers to line up the inks and allowing inspectors to check that it was done well and consistently. The important parts of this document aren't the drawings, though they help and are used at some stage. No, the key part are the words. Specifications allow you to design systems and to design to different scales and different platforms side by side. There are charts and tables describing behaviors. A picture doesn't say 1,000 words in all cases, and it doesn't say the same 1,000 to everybody. It's subject to interpretation. Tables and bullet lists are often all that's needed anyway. Building a settings panel in an app isn't about replicating the UI in a drawing, it's just a configuration file. We give the implementation teams what they need to do that. Yes, this starts getting into functional specifications, but that's fine, because of what layer we work at. This is the presentation, the user-facing layer. Even if the whole team is contributing, who better to document those than the UX designer? Everyone should review your documents. If you distribute a draft document and everyone goes, okay, right away, or even after a day or two, be worried. You've certainly made mistakes and left things out. If no one discovers your mistakes, they aren't actually reading it. And here I'm going to drop my experience again. Not only is my conviction of documentation mostly from experience in projects, but in researching how documentation is used. Mostly semi-formally by just keeping notes, but once I was able to start a large documentation effort by engaging in research with the various software implementation teams from a bunch of phone manufacturers, if you wondered. So these are research-based, iterative, proven-out best practices. I won't show you that same document again, but give you a few bullet-pointed best practices instead. It's a specification, so treat it almost like a legal document. Number everything. And remember, numbers are permanent. Item B6D, bullet number 7, is always the same, even years later. Developers will start naming components off your format if you stay consistent, and test will use them for their use cases. Make it easy to consume. So far, PDF continues to be best for general purposes. There are some neat online tools, but they're not ideal yet. And if you work with a vendor, do they have access to your repository? Probably not. People are normally distributed between word-centric and picture-centric. Many people are in the middle, of course. The word-centric people get lost in drawings, in my experience, more than the picture-centric people can't read. So lead with the words. That's why they're on the left of my drawings. I've seen development managers hand out assignments by taking the stapled stack of UI spec and tearing off sheets to give to individual teams or groups. Make sure each page says what the project is and what section it's part of. And also where it is in the system. Preconditions and links out to other components need to be clearly labeled. Make the whole thing a permanent document. Task flows and any information architecture documents you did early on should be kept in some partial final format inside this, so it's the single explanation of the whole system. You want all of this in a year or 5 when the project gets a major overhaul, and no one knows how it works today, or why. It's not the 1990s anymore. I was working in the web then, and we spent a lot of time in Photoshop to make websites look the way we wanted, slicing images to fit in tables. That's over. For years. Lines, boxes, buttons, background, and type. Most things you make are going to be programmatically specified in native code or CSS, not sliced from a Photoshop comp. I have launched mobile apps with one raster image. I'm waiting to deliver a mobile website with 0, since I'm increasingly using vector type, not to mention SVG and canvas drawn items. Know your dimensions. I've given them in human scales before, but know how to translate millimeters and points to iOS points, to Android SP and DP, and what a pixel on the web really means. Apps don't support icon fonts natively yet, exactly, and while you can do it, there's some configuration meth with. So you draw icons. Here's the Android guidance on these. Provide your own is what it says. They're wrong. Without a question, wrong. People get familiar with their OS. Within 20 minutes, some studies indicate, and anything that then breaks that paradigm confuses them. For icons, and on apps at least is mostly what we're talking about here, you should always use the basic icons provided by the OS, and use them whenever you can to have the same meaning. Specify these in those documents also, so there's no confusion about which one is which. Especially for iOS, they build icons for themselves, so colors are limited. If you must make a custom one because of that, copy the existing icon shape, pixel for pixel. Icons do change from one release to next, but that doesn't mean we throw our hands up and scream fragmentation. We just plan on it. Check with older icons, especially in Android, where your binary may work on many OS versions. Make sure they're visible in all cases, ideally very visible, and keep up on new releases so you can change to accommodate those. If you zoned in on all this because you disagree with my documentation treatise, this is all true no matter how you do your process. Here's some of the critical style and layout information for a recent very lean, very fast project. I delivered the raster images never. We kept changing our minds, so I never finished them. But with this, and a few more page design scribbles, which I drew on a tool I'm actually having made, I believe, so much in Quick UI sketching, developers are able to get the app, including UI, banged out in just a few days. No comps, no slicing Photoshop, and totally a UX designer deeply involved to make sure it actually looked pretty and branded. In the way good presentations are about the story, not the PowerPoint slides, never forget the documentation is just an artifact. The design exists in the end either way, assuming you don't all get fired, and your expertise is needed no matter what, to explain, to fix problems, to change scope. The real point of Lean is, I think, to encourage collaboration and participation. I think it's done wrong, but the goal is laudable. Whatever you do, be available, approachable, and clear. Know the design inside and out so you cannot be lost when you take that 2 a.m. call from India. In the next section, and the last section finally, we're going to wrap up with some tips on keeping the user and their context in mind when designing, and some freshly released pitfalls from Apple to watch out for.